Tuesday evening was unusually sweltering for mid-October. The heat, as if unwilling to give in to the impending fall, filled the air with heaviness and tension. Patrol Officer Jamar Wilkes cursed, running his sleeve across his damp forehead when his radio suddenly came to life. All available patrols, shots have been reported at the Riverside apartment complex, 23 Maple Street. Repeat, shots fired at the Riverside apartment complex. Jamar knew this neighborhood. Riverside, with its shabby facades and broken elevators, was one of those places where the police showed up more often than the utilities did. A typical Clayton neighborhood where hopes died slowly and dreams weren't even born. 7 minutes later, he was already parking his patrol car outside a 3-story brick building. Neighbors, like vultures, gathered at the entrance, talking animatedly. Some of them were filming the scene on their cell phones, a staple of modern tragedies. "Police! Disperse!" Jamar commanded as he made his way through the crowd. "Third floor! Apartment 312!" An old woman with curlers on her head shouted to him. 17 shots fired, officer!" I counted. 17! Jamar went up the stairs, jumping over the steps. He was met on the 3rd floor by another patrolman, a young Officer Trent, with a face of a greenish hue. "There's a woman," he squeezed out. "Dead, I checked. An ambulance is on its way, but it can't help her." Jamar nodded and cautiously entered the apartment. The smell of gunpowder mingled with the heavy copper odor of blood. In the living room, on a geometric patterned rug, lay a young woman. Her dark skin contrasted with the bright red blood that spread across her light homemade dress. Jamar automatically noted the numerous bullet entry points: chest, stomach, shoulders. "Shit," he exhaled, stepping closer. Someone really wanted to kill her. The apartment was small but tastefully furnished, bright African prints on the couch cushions, artificial flowers in vases, a few framed photographs. One of them showed a smiling victim standing next to a tall man in a police uniform. "Detectives are on their way," Trent announced from the doorway. "I'm canvassing the neighborhood." "Good," Jamar nodded. "I'll take a look around." He scrutinized the body, careful not to disturb the crime scene. The woman was beautiful. Not even death could erase the traces of youth and attractiveness from her face. Dark hair gathered into an intricate hairstyle, geometric manicure, a thin gold chain around her neck. Not far from the body, Jamar noticed a smartphone in a pink case, its screen still glowing. Cautiously leaning over, the officer saw the Snapchat app open. A crack crossed the phone's shattered glass, but the screen continued to work, displaying several notifications. The sound of sirens interrupted his observations. A few minutes later, 2 detectives entered the apartment. A woman in her late 40s with her hair gathered in a tight bundle and a heavy stare was the first. She was followed by a tall, middle-aged man with a short-trimmed beard, carrying a forensics briefcase. "Detective Alina Edwards," the woman introduced herself, showing her badge. "This is my partner, Detective Kenyatta Graham. What do we got here?" Jamar summarized the situation, pointing to the body and signs of a struggle in the apartment. An overturned coffee table, a broken vase, a displaced couch. "Neighbors say there were 17 shots fired," he finished. And by the looks of it, they weren't wrong. Detective Edwards nodded and walked over to the body, while Graham began taking pictures of the crime scene. "Do you know who she is?" Olina asked, scrutinizing the victim's face. "No, ma'am, but in the photos, she's with a man in a police uniform." Olina followed his gaze and frowned as she scrutinized the photograph. "Kenyatta, look at this!" she called to her partner. "Isn't that Shellentine from the 2nd Precinct?" Detective Graham walked over and whistled. "That's him, Romulus Shellentine. He's on patrol, if I'm not mistaken." "So we should check her ID and get an ID," Alina decided. "And where's Shellentine himself? We need to find him too." While Graham searched the apartment for identification, Alina scrutinized the body. "The bullet wounds were close range," she murmured. "The shooter was either very angry or very scared. 17 shots. It's not just a murder, it's an act of rage." Graham returned with his driver's license. "Deirdre Hinner, 26 years old," he read. Different last name than her husband. Probably kept hers after the marriage. "Or they're not officially married," Alina suggested, rising to her feet. Contact Shellentine Station, see if he's on duty. Kenyatta stepped aside with his phone, and Alina noticed the victim's smartphone. Snapchat, she said, cautiously taking a picture of the phone's screen. I wonder what she was doing on there before she died. That's when the medical examiner, Dr. Raynard, an older man with a neat gray beard, entered the apartment. 17 shots fired, Alina said in lieu of a greeting. Someone was very angry. Or wanted to be absolutely sure she was dead, the doctor remarked as he put on his gloves. The time of death is about 2 or 3 hours ago, judging by the body temperature. I'll be more specific after I examine her. Kenyatta returned with a frown. Shellentine was supposed to be on shift at 4 o'clock, but he didn't show up. His cell phone's out of range. Captain says it's never happened before. He's always been punctual. Put a bolo out on him, Alina ordered, and check to see if he's registered to a service weapon. We need to know the caliber. At that moment, Officer Trent appeared in the doorway. Detectives, I canvassed the neighborhood. A lot of people heard a loud argument around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Female and male voices. She was yelling something like, "You don't understand," and "It's not what you think." Then shots rang out. As already said, 17. Several people saw a man run out of the apartment and drive away in a black Ford Focus. That's Shellentine's car, Kenyatta confirmed, reviewing the information on his tablet. He'd already given the license plate number to patrol. Alina walked slowly around the room, scrutinizing every detail. 2 cups of coffee stood on the kitchen table, one nearly full, the other half drunk. The bedroom was relatively tidy, except for the scattered clothes in the ajar closet. He came unexpectedly, Alina suggested. She didn't seem to be expecting anyone. Maybe he was supposed to be at work and came home instead. And saw something that pissed him off, Kenyatta nodded, pointing to the phone. Something on that damn Snapchat. Meanwhile, Dr. Raynard finished his initial examination of the body. All of the bullets remained in the body, so an accurate count of them will be after the autopsy. But visually, there are really about 15 to 17 wounds. Death was almost instantaneous. Several bullets hit the heart. If he was using a service weapon, he should have reloaded, Kenyatta noted. A standard clip holds 15 rounds, plus 1 in the chamber. So he came in here ready to shoot, Alina concluded grimly. Or he completely lost control and kept firing even when he needed to reload. The crime lab personnel continued to look around the apartment, gathering evidence. One of them was carefully collecting spent shell casings. Another was processing surfaces for fingerprints. Detective Edwards, the forensic scientist working in the bedroom, called out to Alina. There's something interesting here. Alina and Kenyatta went into the bedroom, where the CSI pointed to the bedside table. There was a gun lying here, judging by the imprint in the dust, and here. He picked up a small holster. A police holster, but no gun. So Shellentine took the gun with him, Alina nodded, which further supports the theory that he was involved. Kenyatta's cell phone rang in the living room. Detective Graham, he answered and listened to the caller. Got it, thank you. He turned to Alina. Shellentine's service weapon is a Glock 17 9mm, registered to him 4 years ago when he enlisted. Matches the caliber, Alina nodded. And the history. Everything pointed to him. They returned to the living room, where Jamar was still standing by the door, watching the forensics team work. Officer, you're dismissed, Alina told him. Thank you for your help. We'll call you if we need you for a report. Jamar nodded and walked out, and Alina turned to her partner. What do you think? Classic domestic, Kenyatta shrugged. Husband cop caught his wife doing something he didn't like and snapped. The only question is what exactly he saw and where he is now. Alina nodded thoughtfully and took another look at the victim's cell phone. Need to check her social media and connections. Snapchat is open for a reason. Perhaps that's where he saw something that provoked him. The tech carefully bagged the phone in an evidence bag. I'll get it to the lab, detective. Let's see what we can find. When Deirdre Hinner's body was finally placed in a black bag and carried out of the apartment, Alina walked around the crime scene one more time. Something wasn't right here. Something important was hiding behind the obvious facts. Kenyatta, she called to her partner. Look at the pictures. They look happy, don't they? In all the pictures, Deirdre and Romulus were smiling, hugging each other, looking in love. Looks can be deceiving, Kenyatta shrugged. Perhaps they had a problem that no one knew about. Or the problem came out of the blue, Olina said thoughtfully. 17 shots, Kenyatta. That's pure rage. What could have enraged a man so much who was sworn to uphold the law? Before Kenyatta could answer, his phone rang again. Detective Graham, he answered. Yeah, got it. Good, keep the surveillance going. He turned to Olina. Shellentine's car was found in the parking lot of the Sunset Motel in the suburbs. Uniforms are setting up surveillance, but they're not approaching yet. They're waiting for our instructions. Let's get there, Olina said firmly. We have to get him as soon as possible before he does anything else stupid. As they left the apartment, Olina looked again at the spot where Deirdre Hinner's body lay. 17 shots. 17 moments when Romulus Shellentine had decided his wife should die. What exactly had she done to deserve such a fate? And what was her phone hiding with the Snapchat app open? The answers to these questions were yet to be found. In the meantime, Olina Edwards and Kenyatta Graham hurried to the Sunset Motel, where the man who had turned a family drama into a bloody tragedy might be hiding. The morning was overcast. Olina Edwards, stifling a yawn, entered the Clayton Police Department's technical office. Despite the early hour, the place was bustling with activity. Computer monitors illuminated the focused faces of technicians whose fingers moved rapidly across keyboards. Good morning, Detective. Marcus Jameson, the department's chief technical analyst, greeted her. You're early. Anything on Deirdre Hinner's cell phone? Olina asked without preamble. Marcus nodded and gestured her to his desk. We restored access and did an initial analysis. The smartphone turned out to be a treasure trove of information. Olina leaned over to the monitor where Deirdre's Snapchat profile was open. She's been a pretty active user, Marcus continued. Especially in the last 3 months. Look, he opened up activity graphs showing a significant increase in use of the app since the end of July. And it's not just filters and funny photos. Marcus moved on to the contact list. Especially intense correspondence with this user, Kingdoms. What's in there? Mostly private messages, many of which disappear after viewing, a feature of the app. But she had saved some. Marcus opened the saved chat. Olina quickly looked through the messages, feeling her forehead frown. The correspondence was overtly romantic, turning intimate in places. A secret affair, she muttered, and not platonic by the looks of it. There's more. Marcus opened the call history. On the day of the murder, about an hour before the estimated time of death, Deirdre had started a live stream on Snapchat. Judging by the metadata, the broadcast lasted about 20 minutes. Is live streaming for this Kingdoms? In all likelihood, yes. The broadcast was private, just for him. Olina straightened up, trying to comprehend the information. Could we find out exactly what was broadcast? Marcus shook his head. Live content isn't stored on Snapchat servers for more than 24 hours, and even then access is limited. But we sent a request to the company. Maybe we can get some data through their legal department. Whose Kingdoms? Were you able to identify him? We're working on it. So far, we've only been able to establish the IP address from which the user most often logged in. It's registered to an ISP in South Clayton. The door opened and Kenyatta Graham walked into the office with 2 cups of coffee. Good morning. He held out 1 cup to Olina. Any news? Olina briefly recounted to him the information she had discovered. So that's what he saw, Kenyatta said thoughtfully. A live broadcast of his wife with her lover. It's possible, but it still needs to be proven. Olina turned to Marcus. What else did you find on her phone? Browser history, other social media. Nothing particularly noteworthy. Mostly fashion, cosmetics, beauty salons. She worked as a stylist at Glamour Queen on Madison Avenue. Good. Keep up the good work, Olina nodded. Especially need to establish the identity of this Kingdoms. Leaving the tech department, the detectives headed to their desks. Well, Kenyatta sank into his chair. It looks like we have a motive. Jealousy's a classic. Yes, but 17 shots is something beyond the usual jealousy, said Olina thoughtfully. We need to dig deeper. What do we know about Romulus Shellentine? Kenyatta opened the case file. 31 years old, 4 years in the service. Average performance, nothing outstanding. No complaints from citizens, but there are two internal reports from the sergeant. One notes that Shellentine was overly aggressive in apprehending a domestic violence suspect. The other is a conflict with a coworker during a shift change. Alina tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. Anger control issues? Interesting. Who's his sergeant? Leroy Johnson, 2nd Precinct. Let's go see him, Alina decided. And then we'll stop by that beauty parlor where Deirdre worked. We need to talk to her coworkers. Sergeant Leroy Johnson was a heavy-set man in his 50s with graying temples and the tired look of a man who'd seen too much. Shellentine, he said thoughtfully when the detectives explained the purpose of their visit. Yeah, not a bad cop. Diligent, punctual, but hot. In what way? Alina clarified. Takes everything too personally, especially family matters. He's got a personal grudge against domestic tyrants. One time he almost went off on a detention. A guy beat his wife, and when we got there, he started screaming. Shellentine almost punched him. And what about the conflict with a colleague? Kenyatta asked. Johnson waved his hand. It was nothing. They argued with Ramirez over a little thing, but Shellentine got mad. I had to break it up. But I never would have thought he'd be capable of... The sergeant didn't finish the sentence. Kill his wife? That's what Alina said. Yes. He always spoke of her with such a... affectionate, Brought her lunches to the salon where she worked. He gave her flowers for no reason at all. Jealous? Johnson thought about it. Not pathologically, but yes. He kept a close eye on who she socialized with. I once heard him on the phone to find out why she was late after work. When was that? A month and a half ago, Johnson frowned. Now that I think back, he's been kind of twitchy lately. Silent. Last week I asked if everything was okay, and he mumbled something about bitchin' work and walked away. I figured he was just tired. Alina and Kenyatta looked at each other. Thank you, Sergeant, Alina said. If you think of anything else, give me a call. The Glamour Queen was a small but stylish beauty parlor with a predominantly African-American clientele. Brightly colored posters with intricate hairstyles adorned the walls, and the air was filled with the scents of nail polish and cosmetics. What can I do for you? The receptionist, a petite woman with an impressive afro, asked. The detectives introduced themselves and explained the purpose of the visit. Oh my God, the woman clamped her hand over her mouth. I heard the news, but I couldn't believe it was our Deirdre. So young, so beautiful. We'd like to talk to her colleagues, Alina said softly. Who worked closest to her? That's Heather Whalen. The receptionist pointed to a young woman working on a client's hair in the far corner of the salon. They were best friends. The detectives waited patiently for Heather to finish with the client. Finally, she approached them, wiping her hands on a towel. Heather Whalen? Alina clarified. We're Detectives Edwards and Graham. We're investigating the murder of Deirdre Hinner. Heather's eyes filled with tears. I still can't believe it, she whispered. Who would do such a thing? We suspect her husband, Romulus Shellentine, Kenyatta answered in an even voice. Heather turned pale. Romulus? But that's impossible. He loved her so much. Let's sit down somewhere where we can talk quietly, Alina suggested. They settled down in the small staff lounge. Heather fidgeted nervously with her towel. Were you close to Deirdre? Alina began. Heather nodded. We'd been friends since college. Then we got a job here together. She was a sunshine, always smiling, always finding the good in bad situations. And how was her relationship with her husband? Heather hesitated. They loved each other, really. Romulus was very fond of her, sometimes a little too much. What do you mean? Well, he was a little, controlling, always calling, asking where she was, who she was with, when she'd be back. Deirdre said it was caring, but sometimes I could see she didn't like it. And lately? Have you noticed any changes in their relationship? Heather lowered her eyes. Yes, something was going on. Deirdre had become sort of secretive, often went out to answer the phone, but I could see that she was actually texting someone, always smiling into the phone. Do you know who she was communicating with? Heather shook her head, then sighed. I'm not sure, but about 2 months ago, a new client came to our salon. Dominic, handsome, successful. He said Deirdre had been recommended to him as the best stylist. He started coming in regularly, always made an appointment with her. They chatted a lot, laughed a lot. And then I noticed they'd exchanged contacts. Do you know this Dominic's last name? Summers, I think. He said he was in real estate, owned his own firm or something. Olina and Kenyatta looked at each other. Kingdoms. King Dom S. King Dominic Summers. Too obvious to be a coincidence. Did Deirdre admit to you that she was in a relationship with this man? Heather licked her lips nervously. Not directly. But one day, after a couple glasses of wine, she said she'd met a man who makes her feel like a desirable woman, not just a wife. I asked what that meant, and she just smiled and said it was just fantasy. But I knew it wasn't. And Romulus? Did he know about this Dominique? I don't think so. Deirdre was very careful. When Romulus came to the salon, she asked me not to mention new clients. He even came in once when Dominic was here. They almost crossed paths, Dominic leaving through the back door and Romulus entering through the front door. Did you see Romulus yesterday? Heather shuddered. Yes. He came in about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He looked strange, pale, tense. He asked where Deirdre was. I told him she'd taken the afternoon off. He didn't say anything and left. And then, Heather's voice trembled. Then I found out she was dead. Do you know where she went after she took the day off? Said she was going home to rest. She'd been tired lately, nervous. After they finished talking to Heather, the detectives went outside. So we have a lover, Kenyatta summarized. Dominic Summers, realtor. Shouldn't be hard to find him. And we have confirmation that Romulus came here shortly before the murder. Olina nodded. We should check the security cameras in the neighborhood, see where he went after the salon. They returned to the station, where a call from Marcus was waiting for them. Detective Edwards, we've identified Kingdoms, the technical analyst reported. It's really Dominic Summers, 34 years old, owner of a small real estate agency called Summer Realty. Lives on the south side, 15 Maple Drive. Great, we'll go see him, Olina decided. What else? We checked the security cameras outside the beauty parlor. Shellentine was indeed there yesterday, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After that, he got into his car and just sat there for a while. The footage shows him looking at his cell phone and looking. Well, let's just say agitated. How agitated? At one point, he slammed his fist on the steering wheel so hard that the klaxon went off. A few bystanders turned around. Then he took off. Were you able to trace his route? Partially. He was headed toward her and Deirdre's apartment. The last camera we saw him on was 2 blocks away. What about Romulus's cell phone? What about it? The last signal was picked up yesterday at 3:05 a.m., not far from their apartment. Then the phone was either turned off or the battery was removed. Olina rubbed the bridge of her nose thoughtfully. Well, let's pay Mr. Summers a visit. Perhaps he can shed some light on what was going on between him and Deirdre. Dominic Summers lived in a neat 2-story house in a relatively affluent neighborhood. When the detectives pulled up, they noticed the front door was ajar. Something's wrong, Kenyatta said tensely, instinctively placing his hand on his holster. They cautiously climbed up onto the porch. Olina knocked and announced loudly, "Clayton Police, Mr. Summers?" There was no response. The detectives exchanged glances and, drawing their weapons, slowly entered the house. The living room was a light mess, an overturned chair, papers strewn about, but no signs of struggle or blood. Olina gestured for Kenyatta to check the upstairs, and she headed for the kitchen. It's clear upstairs, Kenyatta reported after a few minutes. It's clear up here, too, said Olina, but it looked like someone was looking for something, or just angry. At that moment, the front door swung open and a tall man in an expensive suit appeared on the threshold. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" he asked indignantly when he saw the strangers. "Dominic Summers?" Olina clarified, showing her badge. "Detectives Edwards and Graham, Clayton Police Department. Your door was open, so we thought we'd check to see if everything was okay." Dominic frowned. "I'm sure I locked the door when I left this morning." "Did you notice that someone had been in the house?" Kenyatta asked. Dominic looked around and cursed. "Yes, there was definitely someone poking around. What's going on?" "Mr. Summers, do you know Deirdre Hinner?" Olina asked bluntly. Dominic's face changed, becoming tense. "Yes, she's my, My friend. Why? I'm afraid we have some bad news. She was murdered in her apartment yesterday. Dominic staggered and sank heavily onto the couch. Murdered? But, how? By whom? We're investigating the case, Alina replied. And we know about your relationship with Deirdre. Dominic lowered his head. Yes, we had a relationship. She was unhappy in her marriage. Her husband was the controlling type. She felt caged. When was the last time you had contact with Deirdre? Yesterday afternoon. He looked up. We had a video chat on Snapchat. Live? Kenyatta clarified. Yes. She called me around 2:30, said she'd taken some time off and wanted to see me. We talked then. He hesitated. Well, it was a private conversation. We understand, Alina nodded. Go on. About halfway through the conversation, she suddenly became frightened. She said she heard a noise. Then I heard the door open and she shouted, "Romulus, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work." Then the connection went dead. I tried to call back, but she wouldn't answer. What did you do? Nothing. Dominic spread his hands. I thought they were just having a family argument. Deirdre often said he was jealous, but not aggressive. I couldn't have imagined that. His voice trembled. Do you think Romulus Shellentine saw your conversation with Deirdre? Kenyatta asked. I don't. It's possible. If he came in when we were on the comms, then yes. He could see the screen. Alina and Kenyatta looked at each other. A picture was beginning to emerge. Mr. Summers, do you have any idea who might have broken into your house? Alina asked. Dominic turned pale. Do you think it was Romulus? Does he know about me? It's possible, Kenyatta nodded, especially if he saw you on the screen of Deirdre's phone. God, Dominic ran a hand over his face. He's a cop, right? He could find me and... We're not going to let that happen, Alina said firmly. Right now we're looking for Romulus Shellentine. His car was found at the Sunset Motel. In the meantime, I suggest you stay with friends or relatives just in case. Leaving a stunned Dominic Summers, the detectives returned to the car. The story adds up, Kenyatta remarked. Romulus comes home unexpectedly, catches his wife having virtual sex with her lover, loses control, and shoots her 17 times. And then tries to find the lover, Alina added. Maybe he got Dominic's name through Deirdre's phone, found his address, and stopped by here before hiding in the motel. Then we'd better hurry to the Sunset before he does anything else. The Sunset Motel was a typical 2-story G-shaped building with a faded neon sign and cracked asphalt in the parking lot. Romulus's black Ford Focus was still parked at number 12, where 2 patrol cars were on duty. What's the situation? Alina asked the older patrolman. The subject is in the room, he reported. The windows are shuttered, there's no movement. Phones disconnected, no answer. Motel manager say anything? Checked in around 5 o'clock last night. Paid cash 3 days in advance. Seemed nervous. No one's seen him since. Alina nodded and turned to Kenyatta. Shall we request an assault warrant? It's on its way, the partner replied. The prosecutor gave the go-ahead, given that the suspect was an armed police officer accused of murder. They waited for the arrival of the assault team, 6 officers in body armor, armed with shotguns and shields. Here's the plan, the lieutenant of the extraction team said to them. We enter quickly, but without making too much noise. Shellentine's a cop. He knows the protocols. Probably armed. Our job is to disarm him with minimal risk to all parties. Alina and Kenyatta have taken up positions behind the extraction team. At the lieutenant's signal, the 2 officers with the battering ram kicked in the door and the group stormed the room. Police! Hands up! On the floor! On the floor! Shouts echoed through the small space of the motel room, but there was no response. After a few seconds, it was clear why. The room was empty. Shit! Kenyatta cursed. Where is he? Alina looked around. The bed was unmade. Romulus's empty wallet was on the table, and his badge and police ID were next to it, but neither he nor the gun was in the room. He was here, Alina said, and probably left recently. But where to? Kenyatta frowned. And most importantly, why did he leave the car? At that moment, an emergency message came over the radio. All units, code 3. An armed suspect has been spotted a block away from the Sunset Motel, heading southbound. Description matches Romulus Shellentine. Suspect is armed, dangerous. Olina and Kenyatta glanced over and rushed to their car. The hunt for the killer was entering its decisive phase. Interrogation room number 3 at the Clayton Police Department had always seemed smaller to Olina Edwards than it really was. Maybe it was the gray walls, or the meager lighting, or maybe it was the feeling that the air here was saturated with stories of despair and anger. Today this room seemed especially cramped. Romulus Shellentine sat at a metal desk, handcuffed to a ring embedded in the floor. He'd been caught 3 blocks from the Sunset Motel, hunched over with his hood pulled over his head, trying to blend in with the occasional passerby. He was carrying a service weapon with an empty clip. He did not resist arrest. "The recording is on," Olina said, turning on the recorder. "Interrogation of suspect Romulus Shellentine. Present are Detective Olina Edwards, Detective Kenyatta Graham, the suspect, and his attorney Marcus Jefferson." Romulus sat with his head down. His dark skin seemed gray in the artificial light, and deep shadows lingered under his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Shellentine," Olina began, "do you understand why you're here?" Romulus slowly raised his eyes. They were red, inflamed, but dry, like a man who had already cried all his tears. "I killed my wife," he said in a lifeless voice. The lawyer, a thin, middle-aged man in an inexpensive suit, put his hand on Romulus's shoulder. "My client is in a state of severe emotional distress," he said. "I advise him to invoke the Fifth Amendment and—" "No," Romulus said firmly. "I want to speak. I want everyone to know what happened." The lawyer sighed but nodded. "Tell us what happened yesterday," Olina suggested. Romulus folded his hands on the table. His fingers were long, strong, the hands of a man used to holding a weapon. "I was supposed to be on shift at 4 o'clock, he began. "But I had some kind of premonition Deirdre's been weird lately. She's been aloof. She's often been late for work, always on the phone. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd say, salon clients." He paused, swallowed. "Yesterday I decided to stop by her salon before my shift. I wanted to surprise her, take her out to dinner. When I arrived, they told me she'd taken the night off. It was weird. She hadn't said anything about taking time off in the morning." "So what did you do?" Kenyatta asked. "I called her, but she didn't answer. I sent a text message. No answer either. I got in my car and waited, thinking maybe she had just stepped out for a while. And then the notification came." "A notification?" Olina asked. "Yeah, from her Snapchat account. You see, we had, an arrangement. We could see each other's notifications. Nothing fancy, just to keep in touch. And I saw that she had started a live stream." Romulus closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to erase a memory. "I opened the app. The broadcast was private, but I was able to log in, through her account on my phone. We used to do that sometimes, use each other's phones." "And what did you see?" Olina asked softly. Romulus's face contorted. "My wife, in our bedroom, with another man. I mean, not physically with him. He was on the screen. They were having virtual sex. She was showing him her body, telling him how much she wanted him, called him king, and he said that soon they'd be together for real, that she should finally get rid of that controlling bastard." Kenyatta and Olina looked over at each other. They now understood what the nickname Kingdoms meant. King Dominic S. "Go on," Olina nodded. "I was shocked. I couldn't believe my eyes. My Deirdre, my wife." His voice trembled. "I went home. I wanted to talk to her, to understand why. I mean, we loved each other, you know? At least I thought we did." "And what happened when you got home?" Romulus lowered his head further. "She was still live. I heard her voice from the bedroom when I came in. She didn't hear me open the door. I stood in the hallway and listened to her tell him that I meant nothing to her, that I was just a safe option, that we never had any real passion." He looked up, and in his eyes Olina saw pain mixed with rage. I walked into the bedroom. She cried out in surprise, dropping the phone. I saw his face on the screen. He was scared too. She started explaining something, saying I had it all wrong. I just asked, "How long?" She said 3 months. 3 months she'd been with him. The whole time she'd been lying to my face. Romulus clenched his fist so hard his knuckles turned white. I don't remember what happened next. I only remember pulling out a gun. She was screaming, trying to explain that she loved me, that it was a mistake. And then I just watched her fall. I kept shooting, even when I ran out of bullets. Clicked the trigger on the emptiness. There was a heavy silence in the room. Olena stared at the man in front of her. Not a criminal, not a monster, but a broken man whose world had crumbled in an instant. "What did you do then?" she asked. "I don't know. It's all a blur. I remember leaving the apartment, got in the car, driving somewhere. Then I ended up in a motel. I thought about killing myself, but I couldn't. Not out of fear. I just thought it would be too easy a way out. I have to answer for what I did." Kenyatta opened the case file. "Mr. Shellentine, did you go into Dominic Summers' house?" Romulus nodded. "Yes. I found his address in Deirdre's cell phone. Wanted to. I don't know what I wanted. To see the man who ruined my life. But he wasn't home. I just looked at his place. Rich house, expensive furniture. All the things I couldn't give Deirdre." "Did you want to hurt him?" Kenyatta asked bluntly. Romulus shook his head. "No. I already realized what I had done. Another murder wouldn't have changed anything. I just wanted to see his face, to see what was so special about him." Olena paused, studying Romulus. 5 years of detective work had taught her to recognize lies, but now she was faced with a man telling the bitter truth. "Mr. Shellentine," she said softly, "you shot your wife 17 times. That's not just murder by passion. It required reloading your weapon. Did you have anger control issues?" Romulus raised a weary look at her. "Did I? No, I mean, the sergeant reprimanded me a couple times. Said I was overreacting to certain calls, especially domestic violence." "Why domestic violence?" Romulus was silent for a moment, then took a deep breath. "My father beat my mother. For years. I grew up seeing her hide her bruises, lying to the neighbors about falling or hitting herself. She loved him no matter what, and he cheated on her, humiliated her, raised his hand. I swore to myself I'd never be like that I would protect women like I couldn't protect my own mother." "And that's why you joined the police force?" "Yeah, I wanted to be a good man, a good husband. And I thought things were different with me and Deirdre, that we had a true love, a mutual love. And it turns out," he didn't finish the sentence. "Did you feel betrayed by her? Like your mother betrayed you by staying with your father?" Olena's question hit the mark. Romulus's eyes widened as if he was thinking about it for the first time. "Maybe," he whispered. "I don't know. I just watched everything I believed in crumble. Everything I had built my life on." At that moment, a detective's assistant entered the room and handed Olena a folder. She quickly glanced through the contents and nodded. "Mr. Shellentine," she continued, "the lab has confirmed that all 17 bullets recovered from Deirdre's body were fired from your service weapon. The ballistics report leaves no doubt." Romulus nodded as if that wasn't news. "I know. I already told you I killed her. The prosecutor could consider it first-degree murder," Kenyatta warned. 17 shots. The need to reload the gun. That points to premeditation, not effect." Romulus's lawyer straightened up. "My client was clearly in a state of extreme emotional distress. Any jury would see this as murder by passion, second-degree murder at most." Olena went back to Romulus. "Tell me, did you suspect your wife's infidelity until yesterday?" Romulus frowned. I don't know, maybe subconsciously. She's changed in recent months, distant. She talked to me less. But I chalked it up to fatigue, work. I didn't want to see the obvious." "What about Dominic Summers? Did you know about him?" "No, I mean, she mentioned a new client who came to the salon a lot, but I never made a big deal out of it. I trusted her." Kenyatta opened the laptop and turned the screen toward Romulus. "This is the surveillance footage of the beauty parlor. You're sitting in the car watching something on your phone. This appears to be the moment you saw the live feed. What exactly did you feel then?" Romulus stared at the screen for a long time, where a shot of himself, pale, his face distorted with shock, was frozen. "I felt like I was dying," he finally said, "like something was breaking inside. I always thought that love was forever, that if two people promised to be together, nothing could destroy it. My mother loved my father, despite all his betrayals. She seemed so devoted, and suddenly I see her with someone else." "You went home with the intention of killing her?" "No," Romulus raised his head sharply. I swear I just wanted to talk, ask her why, give her a chance to explain herself. But when I heard her talking about our marriage like it was a mistake, something broke inside me. Olena slid a picture of Dominic Summers over to Romulus. Do you recognize this man? Romulus looked at the photograph carefully and nodded. Yes, that's him. The face I saw on Deirdre's phone screen. The same King. Mr. Summers claims to have been in contact with Deirdre the moment you entered the apartment. He heard your voice, heard the argument begin. Do you confirm that? Yes, she was talking to him when I came in. Romulus clenched his fists. She was, half naked. The phone was on a stand so he could see her. When I came in, she freaked out, dropped the phone, but the connection stayed on. He must have heard everything. And he didn't do anything? Called the police? Romulus grinned bitterly. Obviously he hadn't. Perhaps he was scared too. Or maybe he didn't care. Olena closed the file folder. Mr. Shellentine, are you fully aware of your actions and their consequences? Romulus nodded slowly. Yes, I killed the man I loved most in the world, because of anger, because of pain, because of betrayal. But that is no excuse. I know I have to answer for it. We're done for the day, Olena announced, turning off the recorder. The officer will escort you back to your cell. As Romulus was led away, Olena and Kenyatta were left alone in the interrogation room. Do you believe him? Kenyatta asked. That he didn't plan the murder? Olena tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. I do. It's a classic tragedy of passion. He loved her so much he couldn't bear the betrayal. His childhood, his father issues, his desire to be a good husband all created a dangerous mix. When he saw that his perfect life was just an illusion, he broke down. But 17 shots, Olena. That's not just effect. I agree. But it's not cold-blooded murder either. It's rage, pain, frustration. He fired until the clip was empty, reloaded and kept firing. Not because he wanted to make sure she was dead, but because he couldn't stop. Each shot was a cry of pain. Kenyatta sighed. You know, I've been married 15 years, and every time I come across stories like this, I think of my Lorraine, about how fragile trust can be between people. Olena nodded, gathering her papers. There is no right or wrong in this story, Kenyatta. Just people who hurt each other. Deirdre, who was looking for something she felt she wasn't getting in her marriage. Romulus, who couldn't handle the betrayal. And Dominic, who may have just taken advantage of the situation. Still, the law is the law, Kenyatta pointed out. Romulus committed murder. Yes, and he will answer for it, but that doesn't make the story any less tragic. A few days later, Romulus Shellentine was charged with second-degree murder. The prosecutor, after reviewing all the circumstances of the case and the defendant's psychological state, decided not to press the charge of first-degree murder. Romulus pleaded guilty. At the sentencing hearing, Olena Edwards testified about the progress of the investigation. She described how she reconstructed the timeline of events of that fateful day, how Romulus Shellentine accidentally discovered his wife's infidelity through a Snapchat live stream, how she drove home in a state of passion and committed the murder. 17 shots fired, she said, turning to the judge. That number speaks not of composure, but of the depth of emotional distress. Romulus Shellentine was not a danger to society. He was only dangerous to one person, the woman he loved and who he felt had betrayed him. This does not excuse his actions, but it does help us understand their nature. The judge set Romulus Shellentine's bail at $1 million, which he failed to post. He remained in the Clayton County Jail until his trial. Dominic Summers testified as a witness. He admitted to having an affair with Deirdre Hinner, confirmed that he was in touch with her at the time of the murder. According to him, he heard screams, gunshots, but from shock could not immediately call the police. When he finally pulled himself together, it was too late. Psychological experts engaged by the defense confirmed that Romulus acted in a state of affect, caused by a strong emotional shock. His past, his childhood in a domestic violence family, his desire to be the perfect husband, policeman, protector, created fertile ground for tragedy. Romulus Shellentine's trial ended with a sentence of 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10 years. He pleaded guilty in full, refusing to appeal. After the verdict was announced, Olena Edwards met with him for the last time. "Do you realize that betraying Deirdre doesn't justify what you did?" she asked. Romulus nodded. "I do. I'm not looking for excuses. I killed the man I loved, and I will remember it every day. Every one of those 17 shots will be with me for the rest of my life." "Why 17? Alina asked the question that had long plagued her. "Why not 15 or 20? Romulus smiled sadly. July 17th. The day I met Deirdre. I didn't realize it when I fired. But maybe, somewhere deep inside, I knew. In killing her, I was killing both our love and the day it began. This answer made Alina think about the fine line between love and hate. How easily one feeling can turn into the other. She'd dealt with crimes of passion many times before, but the story of Romulus and Deirdre had touched her particularly deeply. Maybe it was because behind the mask of a perfect family, behind the facade of a happy marriage, hid the same fears, doubts, and frustrations that are familiar to everyone. Maybe because anyone, even the strongest and most confident person, can lose control in an instant. Or maybe it's because in each of us lives the same demon that pushed Romulus Shellentine to fire 17 shots at the woman he once swore to love and protect for the rest of his life.
Take to our